shepherd is to, that means it's two, all right, 2 dots. That'll save me some writing, all right? As a shepherd is to his sheep, so too, I'll represent that with 4 dots, so too a captain is to his crew. Is that what we discovered? Yes. And we could equally say, could we not, as a shepherd is to sheep, so is a physician or doctor is to his patients? Oh, by the way, do you think we might be able to think yet of another one in here?
What about philosopher king?
Pardon?
The philosopher king.
I don't know anything about them yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
Not yet. Could we also put a coach and his athletes?
Yeah. Sure. Right.
Ah, so we could expand those. I see. Now I'd like to take one of them, this set, and see whether we can go into a little more detail about how he functions, because that will open up the possibility of taking whatever we discover in this relationship, see if it's binding on these others. All right. As you can see in this very, very sensitively drawn picture, the great suffering of this individual. Right? Yeah. And he's rushing for help, so he isn't too bad. He's not on it. But he's nonetheless, would you not agree, will even make him more pathetic. Here it comes. Now, I don't want you to shed a tear, but we'll make him shed a tear. All right, here we go. All right. Would you agree now that this man has a certain knowledge? All right? And with that knowledge, he may even consult a book or two, but nonetheless, you'd say he certainly has this knowledge of the human body, as we said before, and these other things. Would you agree then, he sees the same person that we see, literally, we see the same thing he sees, but he, with this knowledge, he understands what he sees, we don't. On the basis of that understanding, he can then make a diagnosis. Now, a diagnosis in Greek just means through knowledge. So it's through his knowledge that he makes this diagnosis. On the basis of that, he can then say, I think we should have a treatment plan set in motion, which might then bring you into a better condition of health. And then he will focus on the fact that we have to have a follow-up to make sure that the things that are recommended reach those kinds of conditions and bring about a better condition than a worse. And then he also has to have a little discussion with this person and talk about the need for timing. That if you wait too long, and therefore the urgency must be stressed. With this information, would you agree, now our poor suffering person now has to make a difficult decision. Right? And that is, he has to decide whether or not he will allow himself to enter into this relationship, because he can only do it voluntarily. He must voluntarily enter this relationship. Now, when he does, he changes his name, and so does he. He changes his function, and so does he, by this miracle of entering into the voluntary relationship based upon knowledge and understanding. Because if he enters into it, and the physician agrees, voluntarily, they both agree, now he becomes something else. He becomes his ruler. And he becomes the subject. And on the basis of that, He has a right to command the subject to do this and to do that, change his diet, maybe even change his lifestyle, where he's living, how he's living. He has the right to make these commands. Only because of this basis. Now, he has a right, of course, to reject that, and if he does, the relationship dissolves. Therefore, he then must then accept the fact that he is his ruler and accepts these commands and enters into the treatment. Would you not agree there are some treatments that are of such a nature that he is going to suffer more than he did before and may endure more pain than he did before, and therefore we're left with a curious question: why would anyone want to obey such commands? There's only one reason, isn't it? Time. Unless the physician or the doctor tells him that if you don't follow this, there are certain consequences which will make its effect known to you in the most immediate and terrible way. And faced with that, he has to make a judgment. Will I put up with this treatment, perhaps endure greater pain and suffering, in the hope that, what will I do? Benefit in the end, right? And unless he sees that that is the way in which he may benefit, it is an irrational relationship.
I remember the movie King George, where he was sick, and the doctor's physician took over and had complete command over King George.
Yeah,
and he did
that's
what
right.
he was told, and he became better.
That's right. Now, we can play with this now, okay? Let's use this. Now, would you say that everything we've said up to this point can equally be applied to this relationship? To this relationship? Oh.
No, not the crew.
Not the crew? When he tells...
Complete command. They have no, once they're off the sea, they have no choice.
But there's also the element of timing again.
Yeah.
And the benefit is that they can be promoted in due time if they follow these, if they subject themselves to this complete rulership.
Might the benefit equally be a safe voyage?
Or that too, right.
And therefore, everyone benefits on board ship. Now, let's raise a point. Suppose for a moment this patient were to discover, first suspicion, then his suspicions are confirmed, that a good number of the decisions the physician has made is so that he himself can benefit and not the patient. What if the patient, see, he changes his name, he becomes a patient, the other becomes the doctor. What if the subject or the patient were to discover that each of the things recommended in this treatment plan do not directly benefit him, but since he has to enter into a relationship and pay for the services, suppose he were to discover then that a good number of the judgments, if not all, were to fatten the doctor's wallet rather than to primarily benefit the patient. If you once discover that or are suspicious of it, what happens to the relationship?
Dissolves.
It's over. Watch now. And you have a right to charge that person with fraud, don't you? That's the basis of natural law. This is the basis of all natural law. Let's take it with the captain and the crew. What's the difference between a pirate and a legitimate captain? They could be twins. They could know exactly the same amount of information about the seas, about the ship, about the cruise, about navigation, about the currents, about the meteorological conditions. And everywhere they're the same except one. Who receives the benefit?